Today, we're going to be talking about using freshly ground grains in everyday life. We're going to be covering why it's better for you, why it tastes so much better, and how to actually fit it into a busy schedule. Because you guys, this is doable. I know it sounds crazy to grind your own grains, but it's totally doable. So welcome to my brand new segment called Baking with Jami. I'm really excited you're here, and we have a ton of new videos coming all about how to bake and bake very healthy. I've always loved baking, but I felt like baking was kind of that splurge you did when you didn't care if you had the extra sugar and calories. And what I found out over the last few years is that you can actually bake things that are healthy and nutritious and good for your family and can be healing and really, really good and that taste phenomenal. So that's what we're going to be covering, and how you can really start replacing processed items in your kitchen with fresh, home-ground, homemade items that do not take 50 hours in your kitchen every single day. Okay? So that is what we are covering today, and I'm really, really excited. So the first thing, very first, I want to point out, this is, I know you're going to ask, this is my NutriMill Harvest. I love it. I mean, can you guys see how beautiful it is? But I also have back here is my NutriMill Plus. That's my first one I ever got. And one of the next videos I'm going to do is a comparison video between the two models, because I know that's your first biggest question. Which model do I get? There's so many different grain mills out there, and not even these two, there's a bunch. So I'm going to do a comparison video and try to help you, because there's some pros and cons between the different models. So picking the right one for you takes just a tiny bit of research. So in one of my next videos, I'm going to share with you how to pick the right one. Okay, so first, before we get into the practicality of doing this in everyday life, I want to talk about why in the world would you grind your own grains? Because when I tell people that I am obsessed now and has changed my kitchen with grinding my own grains, they're like, Jami, you do what? You like grind your own grains? And I think they're picturing I have like a mortar and pestle and I'm like grinding it myself, and it's like a ton of labor and a ton of work. Or like my brother-in-law, when I first was telling him about this, he was like, yeah, so we had like a hand mill growing up, and it like was like so much work. It was like a workout. And then the grain came out very coarse and lumpy. And so like he had this like awful picture from the beginning. So I showed him with the new electric grain mills that it's amazing flour. And now his wife has one and they love it. So I know it sounds really weird. So at first it's like, okay, Jami, you're like way too crunchy. You grind your own grains. It's weird. Okay. First of all, you guys, let's talk about the health. Because right now, all the craze is to cut out all grains completely. And I do not think that that is a healthy diet, to cut out all grains completely for everyone, especially for young, growing kids. Now, there's a lot of research into this, and that's not the main focus of this video. We can do another video that really gets into the nitty-gritty details about the health of it, but you can do a lot of research. Start doing some research on freshly ground grains. They're very, very different than store-bought whole wheat flour, like we're going to cover. So one really good resource I recommend to you is this book called The Homeground Flour Cookbook. The Essential Homeground Flour Book by Sue Becker. It includes 100 delicious recipes. Almost all of the recipes I use with my freshly ground grains, I get out of this book. Now, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, can you just cook like your regular recipes with home-ground grains? Yes, it's just flour. You're making flour. Home-ground flour tends to sometimes lick up moisture a little bit. So every once in a while, you may find you need to add a little more of your liquid because it'll be a little dry. But as you're mixing, you'll see, oh, this is really dry. Add a little more liquid. Other than that, these grains are versatile. You can use them for everything. Okay, but this recipe book is amazing and has a ton. Okay, so the first half of this book talks about the health and why you would freshly ground grains. So this book is a really good beginner. When I got this book, I just sat down and read through the first half and I loved it. So this is a really good resource, but I did want to just read this one part. Okay. Whole grains contain virtually every nutritional component that is vital to health and that will keep you energized and satisfy your appetite. Whole grains contain nearly 90% of all the vitamins, minerals, protein, carbohydrates, and fats that our bodies need. Wheat alone has 40 of the 44 nutrients considered essential to sustain human life. It lacks adequate amounts of only 4 essential nutrients: vitamin A, C, D, and the amino acid lysine. Whole grains ground at home are the best source of real whole grain flour. While some independent millers stone grain their flours, leaving all the grain's components intact, most commercially milled whole grain flour is made by recombining the bran and germ with white flour in proportions that meet legal standards, which vary from country to country. Home ground flour has never been separated. It contains all the life-giving components exactly as they are in the whole grain themselves. Okay, so I'm just barely touching the surface on this, but when you have the wheat kernel or any other type of grain, you have the bran and the germ, and that is where you have all of the oily, nutritious parts. That's where all the amino acids, all the vitamins, all of that is stored in that, but it's a very oily part. And so that part can go rancid very, very quickly. So when it's stored in the grain, it's preserved there. But as soon as you break it open and start to mill it, the oils inside can go rancid extremely quickly. I'm talking within 24 to 72 hours, you've already lost most of the nutritional value. So that bag of whole wheat flour that you're trying to be healthy that you get at the grocery store is already very nutritionally devoid because those oils have gone rancid. Now, what most of the flour producers do to get around that, which doesn't help nutritionally, but so it doesn't have a bad, gross taste, is they take the wheat and the germ, or the bran and the germ, out of the flour. So they start with a white flour base, and they add those things back in to meet the national standards of what whole wheat flour has to have. So where essentially your whole wheat flour you're getting is another processed ingredient. And when we're trying to get back to real whole foods, your whole wheat flour that you think is healthy, which is what I thought, I'm going to reach for the whole, the whole wheat is the healthy option. And the other thing is there's a reason why it has that kind of distinct whole wheat taste, and it gets so flat. And when you make things, it's cardboard. I tried for so long to make whole wheat pizza dough because I'm like, yes, but we just didn't like it. It's so dense. Even when you use white whole wheat, which is the only way to go if you're going to do store-bought, it still is not the same. And so there's so much we could cover on the nutritional, like that's just barely scratching it. But for example, I use Ezekiel flour a lot, which is a combination of 3 different kinds of grains, 3 different kinds of beans and lentils. You combine them all together, run them through your grain mill, and it is a complete protein. It has everything together to make a complete protein. So there's so much nutritional value packed into these. Several of the grains, there's a bunch of different kinds, but several of the grains contain all your B vitamins. Well, we know, you guys, B vitamins are incredibly helpful for energy and a whole plethora of stuff. Well, you know what Americans are incredibly deficient in? Is B vitamins. You know what we're also deficient in? Magnesium, iron. The list can go on, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head. And almost all of those, if not all of those, are found in real whole grains before they've been processed. So it's actually really exciting to see, we've not gotten wheat right in our modern culture. We haven't got the grains right because we know that the empty carbs, the white flour, even our dentured whole wheat is not right. And so we got to figure it out. But to see how nutritious the whole grains are, it's really exciting. Okay, I nerd out on that, so I'm sorry if that was too much information, but I encourage you to do some more research and maybe we'll do some follow-up videos. Okay, the second reason to grind your own grains is it tastes amazing. And this is what I wasn't expecting. I did all the research. I had watched a ton of videos and I was like, okay, I want to do this because I feel like it's going to be so much healthier. I can make these freshly made things for my kids without the preservatives, without chemicals, without added stuff. But what I wasn't prepared for was how good the freshly ground grains taste. So I want you to picture this. Our great-grandmothers, our great-great-grandmothers, all they had was freshly ground real grains. And do you know what? They made everything with that. They made cakes with that. They made cookies with that. They made all their bread with that. And in our culture today, we couldn't imagine making cakes with the store-bought whole wheat flour, but it's because our flour has changed so much. So when you make the freshly ground, I make pancakes and waffles out of it all the time. It doesn't taste like, oh, these are whole wheat pancakes and waffles. They taste amazing. And in fact, I think they taste better because white flour has no taste really, whereas this has like I love using spelt. Spelt has kind of a very like lightly sweet kind of nutty flavor, but very light. This doesn't taste like, oh, this is whole wheat. So I make cookies, you make cakes, I make coffee cake, I make all manner of muffins, breads, and they're amazing tasting. They don't taste like what you traditionally associate with whole wheat. So that was really exciting for me because like our family begs me to make more stuff because not only is it nutritionally superior, like we're not even talking the same thing as store-bought whole wheat, but it tastes amazing. Okay, number 3 reason to grind your own grains if you're not convinced yet is it's much, much, much cheaper in the long run. Now, caveat is you do have to buy a grain mill up front, but my grain mill paid itself off, within months. And I'm going to have this, for a very long time. These things are workhorses. So for your about $200 investment, you are going to be able to get grains per pound so much cheaper than store-bought flour, especially if you're trying to buy the good store-bought whole wheat. Now, so it's definitely cheaper just buying a pound of grain versus the pound of flour. Now, when you think about though, I was still buying store-bought bread. I was still buying store-bought tortillas. I was buying all those things. So you want to compare the amount of money I spent on the ingredients to make those things versus store-bought. It's like out of this world cheaper. And now one of the things people say is, I don't have time to make all that stuff. Well, I'm going to show you at the end of this video how I make 2 to 3 sandwich loaves a week. And it takes me about 3 minutes of my time. So stay through at the end. I'm going to show you that because really, I think you can do this even in a really busy schedule. I think you can fit this in so well. Okay, next let's talk about, is this even practical? So like I said, is this even doable, Jami? I don't have 45 hours to spend in my kitchen. Well, you guys, you know what? I don't either. We have a family of 7. We homeschool. Jason and I run our business full-time together, and we have 5 kids, 5 and under. I do not spend hours a day in my kitchen, and some weeks I don't even spend hours a week in my kitchen. So everything I do has to be very fast, very convenient. And so that's why I said I love doing muffins. I can make 24 muffins for our week that are very nutritious, have iron, B vitamins, is sweetened with raw honey. So good for my kids. I can make 24 really good muffins in 5 minutes. Then they cook in the oven for 15 minutes, but that's hands off. I don't have to touch them. So 5 minutes. So I'm telling you guys, you can fit this in. Now, the other thing I think people are very surprised about is how quick and easy it is to grind grains, because that's the thing I think is like, I don't have time to even feel so weird. And how do I figure that out? Well, I'll tell you, this is a very simple process. Okay. You take your cup of grains, you dump them in, and you turn it on. And it takes 60 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on how much you're grinding. So this big old beauty back here holds 12 cups of grains. So if I was going to do a full 12 cups, it'll take a couple minutes to process all of them. But for almost all of my recipes, I am grinding 2 to 3 cups worth at a time because I typically will grind it fresh for each recipe because I like to use a lot of different grains, which you don't have to. You can use one grain and use it for everything. Hard white would work really well for everything. But I use a lot of different. So if I'm making 5 things in a day, I may use 3 or 4 different flours or grains. So most of my recipes take 2 to 3 cups, and I'm talking 60 to 90 seconds. So what I do, and you're going to see at the end of this video, is I first get my grains for that recipe. I dump them in the grain mill. I turn it on, and it starts grinding, and I go and get my olive oil, and I get my yeast, and I grab the things I need, start putting them in, because usually, most recipes, you put the liquid in first. So I start putting those in. By the time I'm ready for the flour, it's here, and I dump it. So instead of walking over to your pantry, grabbing your bag of whole grain, grabbing your bag of whole wheat flour, you walk over to your cupboard, you grab the grain, and you start it milling. And so it's really easy. I thought I did research into this years ago, and I was convinced of the health. But I just thought, there's no way. I have 2 sets of twins. I had 5 kids in 4 years. This is crazy. There's no way. But it's really simple, you guys. If I can fit it into my schedule, you can fit it into your schedule. It's not that difficult. And I'm a power user. Like, I make everything from scratch now for our kitchen, for bread. But you don't have to do that. You can replace 1 or 2 things. But I will tell you, you may get addicted to it as you get into it. Okay, the third thing I know you're going to ask is, where do you buy grains? Okay, 3 places for you that are my favorite places. The first one I want you to check out is called honeyville.com. They do not have like 50 different choices, but they have the major ones. They have soft white, hard red, and hard white. And they may have a couple others. They may have some millet and a few of those. Now, I will tell you, if you're feeling overwhelmed at all the different names, start with a hard white. It's just a wheat. You're good to go. This book, though, in the beginning, when it's giving all the education, it does break down about 20 different grains. They're nutritional facts. Like, some of them are higher in vitamin B. Some of them have this. And then it tells you which are gluten-free, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and how to use the different ones. So if you're feeling like, I want to do this, but I'm overwhelmed, this is a good resource for you. Okay. So Honeyville's great. The reason I really like Honeyville is that they have flat rate shipping. Their shipping is $4.99 no matter what you order. So my first order with Honeyville, I ordered 150 pounds of grains. I ordered 50 pounds of soft white, hard white, and hard red, and it was $4.99 to ship. So that makes it, and their prices are very good. They offer organic and non-organic options. And so that to me was like, okay, great. The second place I love is Breadbeckers. So if you go to breadbeckers.com, they're my #1 go-to resource. That's who wrote this cookbook, is Sue Becker. I watched through so many of their videos, and they're the ones that really, really convinced me of this. So go to their website. They have a ton of great education, and they have, on their online store, they have everything. So like, I originally wanted to order from them, especially because I felt like they gave me so much. I really wanted to order through them, but they're on the East Coast-ish somewhere, maybe Georgia or somewhere over there. And when I put what I wanted into my cart, it was over $100 of shipping, because they have to ship based on weight, which makes sense. It's very heavy to ship these things. And so I just could not do that. But if I know people who live closer to them, and the shipping wasn't bad at all. So I would still check out Breadbeckers, and I would check out, they have a huge actual store you can go to. And so if you live anywhere over there, I highly recommend you go. And if we ever do a road trip cross country, I am stopping there and buying a ton of stuff. Okay, so Breadbeckers is awesome. The place that my sister and I now get all of our grains is Azure Standard. Azure. Now, this is a little bit different because not everybody has access to this. It is a truck delivery company. And so they do have drop-off points all over the country, but they may not have them in your city. So you're just going to have to get on and see where they have drop-off points. They do truck deliveries once a month. And I now order all of my grains through there because they have really good organic options. It's free shipping. You don't pay anything for shipping because you just pick it up at your drop-off point. And they've just got really good options. And I order a bunch of other stuff from them as well. So Azure is the other really good option. Now, to make this the most affordable, you want to order in the 25 or 50 pound bags, because you're going to get it like 40, 50, 60 cents a pound, a little more expensive if you're looking for some of the organic options, but really cheap per pound. However, I know when you're first starting, it's like, well, I don't know what grains we're going to like. I don't know. So like when I was first starting, I would buy like a pound of each grain to try it out. And yeah, you're spending more like $2.50 a pound, but if you're only buying 1 pound because you want to try it out, that is a really good option. So you can even look on Amazon. They're going to be way more expensive, but again, if you're only buying a pound or 2, you can look on Amazon. The other thing you can do is look on Vitacost. I know they have spelt actually for a really good price, and they have a lot of others. They'll have millet in a little 1 pound bag. So I would check out Amazon and Vitacost, and then any of your local stores that have bulk bins are probably going to have some variety of wheat berries. They will probably have a hard white or a hard red. Some places will carry a millet or a buckwheat or barley. So I would check if you have a Sprouts, they carry them. If you have a Whole Foods, they carry some. And then if you have just any stores, even our Safeway carries, I think, hard red. So any store that has bulk bins, go and look. It's not going to be as cheap as if you purchased 50 pounds online, but it'll give you a really good idea if you even like it. Now, that's the other thing. If you guys want to test this out, you don't have to drop, $200 on a grain mill, couple $100 on 150 pounds of grains. You don't have to do that to try it out. Go buy a pound from the store. And then if you have a high-powered blender like a Vitamix or a food processor or anything like that, you can test it out in there. Now, something like a Vitamix, you wouldn't want to use all the time, especially if you have a larger family, because it would take a lot of time because you'd have to only put in a little bit at a time and grind it. But this could at least give you a good feel. So it's not going to come out, it's going to be more coarse in something like a Vitamix or a food processor, but it'll still work and you can test it out and maybe make a muffin recipe and see how you like it if you're worried about the taste especially, which you shouldn't be because it's really awesome. So you don't have to do this upfront investment. This makes it more like flour, like you touch it and it's flour. This has several different settings for how, if you want pastry flour, you can make it very, very fine. You can make it more coarse. And this produces just flour like you're used to. So the Vitamix, it'll be a little more choppy than that, but you can just do little amounts at once. So that's a really good way to test it out. If you're like, I'm just not sure, I don't want to spend all this money, then get like $2 worth of wheat and you can try it. So that's a good option. Okay, so what have we replaced in our home? I know that's what people want to ask. Like, okay, is this just like a, big expensive piece of equipment and then you replace one thing? So like I said, we have replaced all bread and flour products in our home, 100%. Since I got my grain mill, I don't think I have bought a single bread purchase. This has been, no, I take that back. So we have a tortilla press now. We didn't have our tortilla press at the beginning. And so we were kind of buying tortillas because homemade tortillas take forever. I used to make them way back before we had kids. They are a labor of love, but we love them. And so before I got my tortilla press, we would make them. But what we've been doing is we've been slowly adding some accessories to our kitchen, which has allowed us to do that. So I'm going to give you a peek at the different, I'll do that next. So yes, I'll do it at the end. So first of all, what we've replaced. So we make homemade tortillas. We make homemade pasta. I know you're like, wait a minute, this sounds crazy. I have tools that do these automatically for me. I'm going to show you. So tortillas, pasta, I make all of our sandwich bread. The only thing I haven't really tackled yet is sourdough, which I know is silly because I just need to get it started. But babysitting the sourdough, because you have to feed it every once in a while, it has not worked well for me in the past. So doing a weekly sourdough is definitely something that's on my very next list. And so I'll do some videos for you guys when I finally get to it. But we do all of our sandwich bread. I make muffins. Anything that uses flour, we do that. But we've really replaced everything. I feel like I'm forgetting stuff. I do waffles. We make waffles all the time because those are great. You can make a huge stack of them and then freeze them. So on Sunday mornings when we're running late for church, we can grab out some waffles and heat them up. And they're actually really nutritious, which is exciting. And you drizzle a little bit of real maple syrup on it. And it's actually a really good breakfast for the kids. But they think it's this big special treat that they get waffles. Okay, so we've basically replaced everything in our kitchen. So let's talk about what a lot of you are thinking. Is this good for gluten-free? Because there's a lot of people who are gluten-free. Yes. In fact, if you're gluten-free, I would venture to guess you need this more than I do. Okay. First of all, now do your own research, guys. I'm not a doctor. Everybody knows that, right? I have just done my own research. So do your own research. However, if you're true celiacs, don't try this. Don't use any of the wheat varieties. No. You can try this. You can use the gluten-free. There's many gluten-free grains you can use if you have true celiacs. But If you are just have a gluten sensitivity or you found it upsets your stomach a little bit, then a lot of people have found that the freshly ground grains do not do the same thing. So you could try, unless it's like, going to kill you, don't do that. But if you could try a little bit, you may want to try even the regular wheat varieties, because the gluten functions very differently when it's in the freshly ground. And in fact, a lot of the store-bought whole wheat flours and things that are made have extra gluten added back in because it gets so devoid so quickly. And so a lot of people, even the regular wheat, they can handle a lot better. So I would say maybe try it and see. But there's a bunch of gluten-free grains. Amaranth, for example, is a gluten-free grain. It is highly, highly nutritious. It's gluten-free. I make amaranth muffins every single week. Half the stuff we make ends up being gluten-free just because it's different varieties of grains that I'm using. Amaranth is technically a seed, but it usually gets lumped in. It's actually like a superfood. But you can use amaranth, you grind it in here, and it's naturally gluten-free. So there's some really good options there. The other thing to mention, if you're still too sensitive to the actual wheat varieties, is that there are two really good wheat varieties called spelt and einkorn. I never pronounce it right, you guys, because all I ever do is just read and pronounce it in my head. Does anybody else have that problem? So spelt and einkorn, and these are two ancient grains, which means they have not been altered. Modern wheat has been hybridized, however you say it, and they're a little bit different, whereas these are ancient grains that haven't been changed. Spelt is one you can find very, very easily. I love spelt. You can use it pretty much in replacement of everything. And spelt is a really good one because the gluten structure is very, very different than in modern grains. So spelt is a good one if you want that, because the problem is with gluten-free grains, there's no gluten. Well, gluten is the protein that develops and makes it hard and sticky and all that and kneads well. So you can't do like a real good sourdough or a yeast type breads that are gluten-free. So if you're wanting to do some experimentation, spelt is a good one because the gluten functions differently. Einkorn is the most ancient grain. Its structure is very different. Even on a chromosomal level, it's extremely different than our modern wheat, but it is more expensive to find. However, I have been starting to do more experimentation in baking, and my sourdough that I'm going to be doing is going to be with the einkorn. So I think it's einkorn, actually. Whatever. Someone's going to correct me down below. I never know how to pronounce things, okay? So the einkorn and the spelt are other good options, but there are many gluten-free grains that are just naturally gluten-free that you can just cook with. And you guys, the thing about gluten-free is it's actually really hard to eat healthy gluten-free because you have to buy all those gluten-free substitutes, which a lot of times have really unhealthy oils, are loaded with sugar, have really, you're basically eating then white flour without the gluten and all this other stuff. And so it can be really hard when you're a family that has to be gluten-free and you're like, there's not that many options, and it gets extremely expensive. And that's why I say if you're gluten-free, this might even be more beneficial to you because it's going to be a lot less cost effective, especially if your kids are asking, they want pancakes, they want, waffles, they want muffins. You can make all of those naturally gluten-free, sweeten them with raw honey. They're amazing tasting. Your kids are getting these treats. Your family's getting these treats. You don't feel so deprived. You can do them quickly because, again, muffins take 3 minutes to make, and they're cost effective. I probably already said that, whatever. So it's really, really good all around, okay? And you can do some more Googling on that because we don't have to be a gluten-free family, thankfully, but there's some really good resources on that. So yes, if you're gluten-free, you need a grain mill. So what else do you need in your kitchen? You're like, okay, I'm kind of excited. I want to do this grain mill. Well, what else do I need? To begin, you do not need anything else. You can get your grain mill, you can try out a small amount of grains in your Vitamix, and you just replace that flour you're grinding with what you already use in your regular recipes. Okay, I take that back. Get this book, please. It's $19 on Amazon. See if your library has it. See if you go on to Thrift Books. See if you can find it used somewhere. highly, highly, highly recommend this. However, they do have some recipes on their website. Their website is horrible to navigate, but they do have stuff on their website. So if you can't afford the book also, but think about investing this in the future, it's going to really help. Okay, so you don't have to have anything else. And in fact, I have slowly been building my kitchen and adding more of these things. So the very number one thing that is a big investment, but is my lifesaver, my sister Sienna has it on her wish list for Christmas because she really wants it, is a really good bread maker. So I have a Zerushi bread maker. It runs about $300. Again, it's a big investment, but we saved up for it. We took a lot of time to save up for it. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how I used the Zerushi. I was going to bring it out and put it on the counter, but I forgot it's in our schoolroom making a loaf of bread right now, so I can't show you. But it's a nice big bread maker. It makes a 2-pound sideways loaf. You'll see it in a minute. You'll see the bread. But it takes me about 3 minutes, and I make 2 to 3 loaves a week of sandwich bread. I don't have to knead it. I don't have to do anything to it. You do not have to have a bread maker, but that is what has allowed me to replace all of our sandwich bread, and just all of our bread we eat on a weekly basis, because I don't have a lot of time to knead, and I don't have 2 hours a day to make bread. And at the rate that my 5 kids eat food, and Jason and I would spend my life if I was trying to make it too much. So a bread maker is a really good option. If you do not have it in the budget for the Zerushi just yet, I would say start saving for it. Put that on your Christmas wish list. Start your Mother's Day. Start putting things away for it. Saves Amazon gift cards. For your birthday, ask for Amazon gift cards. But what you can do, because I just got my Zerushi this year, what you can do is get a cheap bread maker from a thrift store. And this is what I had for years. I actually had gone through 2 of the cheap thrift store ones. I found them for about $10 at a thrift store. They're $60 or $70 bread machines, and they're not the same as the Zerushi. The Zerushi is amazing, but what you can do is mix all of your dough in those. You can cook a full loaf, but it's just not quite the same. The Zerushi also has gluten-free settings, by the way. If you're wanting to make gluten-free sandwich breads, it has gluten-free settings right on it. So that's important to know. But the cheaper models, for $10, go to the thrift store. I used to always mix up my pizza dough in my old cheap bread maker because it would, knead it and it worked great. So you can do that. And if you find yourself in a year going, oh wait, I'm kind of getting addicted to this, then you can save up for the Zerushi. But in my opinion, and I'm really picky when it comes to the price. I wouldn't tell you if I didn't think so, but it is worth the price hands down, especially considering the fact that I use it about 3 times a week, every single week. And since I got my grain mill and the bread maker, I have not had to buy a sandwich loaf. And that's because it is so easy. I mean, it's about as easy as writing, we need bread on your grocery list. So it's so, so easy that I think it has enabled me to really keep that into practice. And it's been easy. Okay, second thing I wanted to share are USA pans. You can just use your own regular pans you have, but over the last couple years, I've never bought high quality pans, okay? I have like the cheapy pans we got for our wedding 10 years ago, and I was needing to do some replacing. And so the thing with the USA pans is they're completely nonstick and they're healthy. Okay, so what they have is they have an aluminum core, which aluminum is not healthy to eat off of. They have an aluminum core because aluminum is the best conductor of heat. So my sister kept trying to make her muffins or something, and they kept failing, and she has the same grain mill as I, and it wasn't working. We finally found out she was using really cheap muffin tins, and they just were not working. And so she got a set of these for her birthday, and it has made all the difference. Okay, so they're aluminum core, which is the best conductor of heat, wrapped in stainless steel. So it's all stainless steel on the outside, so your food never comes in contact with the aluminum, wrapped in a silicone covering over the stainless steel. And so silicone is extremely nonstick because stainless steel is not nonstick. The silicone is completely nonstick, and silicone is very safe. And so these are incredible, and I have to tell you, okay, let me show you. So I have their muffin tins. They are wrapped in silicone. You do not need to spray any oil. You do not need to use muffin things. Nothing. I do not pre-treat these. I do nothing. I dump the wet, moist muffin batter in here. And when the muffins are done, you pull them out. I mean, like if I dumped it, they would all fall out. I serious, you guys, it is amazing. When I first showed my sister, she was like, what? They're amazing. Cleaning them, you can just take even a paper towel and clean them out. They are so easy. So what I have done is I really needed muffin tins because I didn't used to make muffins very much until I realized, I can make them really healthy. And so the first things I bought were the muffin tins. So I just slowly started as I needed stuff. I would slowly replace. And there's still some things on my wish list. They're not cheap, but they're not super expensive. So I want to say the muffin tin is around $15 to $20, and you'll never have to buy another muffin tin ever, and it's well worth the investment. So not cheapest of the cheap, but I don't think they're terribly expensive for how amazing they are. So the USA pans have my heart for life. The next thing I want to show you is my fun item. I think a lot of you are going to say, oh, that's way too much work, but I love this. This baby is my tortilla maker. So we make all of our tortillas. I have found it actually to be extremely convenient because we've been really busy the last few months. And there's a lot of days where it's 3 o'clock and I'm like, what's for dinner? And so we've been doing a lot of Mexican last minute and we don't have any tortillas in the house. And I could just whip them up because it takes like 3 ingredients. It's like salt, water, oil, flour. And so I always have those on hand. And so there's been so many nights where we're like, we don't know what's for dinner. And I'm like, I've got ground beef in the freezer. I've got dried beans. Let's make some tortillas. And then you can just make them. So I know it sounds kind of like tortillas, that's kind of hard, but I've actually found it to be incredibly convenient because I can make them anytime. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had tortillas in the house. They are whole wheat, which whole wheat tortillas from the store are not very good. They're whole wheat. There's just a couple ingredients. There's no chemicals. There's no preservatives. There's nothing in them. And it's actually very, very easy. And my sons love making them. So I think even as they're only 5 now, so they help Daddy and I make them. But as they're even a little bit older, this is something that they could completely take over and make the tortillas themselves because it's that easy. So I did a ton of research on these because there's a lot of different tortilla presses. This one is going to run you about $70, which has well been worth the investment. But what's unique about this is it's a tortilla press and it's a tortilla maker, so you can cook them right here. I was a little bit worried because real tortilla snobs will say, you can't do that, you can't make it on there. But after reading reviews and watching some videos, I took the plunge. We've been really happy. A lot of tortilla presses are designed for just corn tortillas. They're not designed for flour tortillas. Well, we want to make flour tortillas 99% of the time. And so you make up the dough. Recipes in this book. Actually, the chocolate amaranth muffins are also in this book. The Zerushi bread recipe that I make is in this book. I basically just cook out of this. So you take the little ball of dough, you set it in, close it, press down, it flattens it, and then it cooks it about 30 seconds on each side, and the tortillas are done. So it's definitely something that I can do while I'm making other things in the kitchen because I put it on and then I turn around and I make something and then I come back and I'll flip it and then I make something. It's kind of like making waffles. I love making waffles because I can get a bunch of other stuff done in the kitchen while the waffles make, and then we have a whole stack of homemade tortillas. I don't have to babysit it too much, or I'll stick Jason and the kids on it and the kids love making them. Jason doesn't mind. And so then I can get the rest of dinner done and we have fresh, hot tortillas. And so I love this baby. And you can tell, I don't know if you can see in the video, it's very dirty because it gets a lot of love and a lot of use. And so we love this. This is the tortilla maker. Okay, the very last thing I wanted to show you is my Philips pasta maker. And again, this is more of a specialty item. This is not something that you need to rush out and go get right away. But here's the funny thing. I bought this like 4 or 5 years ago before I ever got into freshly ground grains because I just have always wanted to make pasta. I thought it'd be so cool, but handmade pasta, you guys, is a labor of love like homemade tortillas. It is so time intensive that I've never ever done it because I don't have the time. And it was like, okay, is this really worth it? So with this, you can make whole wheat pasta that tastes like just good regular pasta. Like it's amazing tasting pasta and it's almost completely hands off. So if you guys come over to my Instagram, instagram.com/JamiBalmet, I actually have some videos saved in my favorites, whatever those are called, up in my profile on how I use the pasta maker. But this is how easy it is. You throw in 3 ingredients: flour, egg, and water. And there's actually a recipe book that comes with it where you can make like pesto and tomato, like different flavored pastas, which I haven't done yet, but I really want to. So you throw them in and you press start. It mixes it for you and then it starts coming out like that. And then your pasta's done. And that's why people are like, Jami, you make your own tortillas, you make your own pasta. That sounds crazy. It's so easy. Like, I feel like I'm cheating when I'm like, I make my own pasta, because like it doesn't really feel like it. And so I throw in my freshly ground grains, turn it on. It has a spaghetti attachment. It has actually a ravioli attachment, although you have to like stuff the raviolis. I haven't done that yet. It has several different, like it has like 6, and then they're all down here. So then you've got the different attachments right below. It's definitely been worth it. And so I got it several years ago because I had found a deal for a refurbished one, and Amazon, as of this last year, has refurbished ones on their website. So I think the refurbished options are $159. So again, it's gonna be an investment maybe you do down the road, but it's been a one-time investment, and now we make all of our own pasta. And so that, I mean, really, we're talking pasta that's costing like 5 cents to make like a whole batch. I mean, I don't really know, but like hardly anything, maybe 25 cents. And you can also, this is one of my next projects, is you can dry the pasta or freeze the pasta. So I want to do like a pasta day where I just make like a ton while I'm working in the kitchen and then dry it. And you dry it just like, you know, pasta you'd get at the store. And then you have it, or you can freeze it. And so again, the pasta is another one like the tortillas, where I'm starting to make spaghetti, I'm making dinner, I just throw it in. It takes 10 to 15 minutes from start to finish because it does so much mixing, but that's completely hands off by me. All I have to do is grind the grains and dump it in, and then I can just be cooking, and then I'll check on it and it's coming out and I don't have to do anything. And so I make my own homemade pasta. And it's like 10 seconds of work. It's super easy. Okay, so these are all the things that I cheat with that makes it seem like I do a lot more in my kitchen, but these actually really, really help. So I'm gonna have links for you down below. You can find all of these things. And then what I wanna show you right now, you guys, is how to make a sandwich loaf in under 5 minutes. Okay, the last thing that I'm gonna show you really fast is how quick you can incorporate these breads into your daily life. One of my very favorite things actually that I make throughout the week are muffins, pancakes, waffles, all those kinds of things, because they're quick breads. There's no yeast involved, which means there's no rising, there's no kneading. So for batches of muffins that are actually super healthy, they're sweetened with raw honey, really, really good for you. They're super protein packed. To make a thing of muffins, you mix it together and you pour them in the muffin tins. So I'll have to do another video showing you how I do those, but I do those for snacks all the time for the kids because it takes me maybe 5 minutes. The thing that people ask a lot about though is sandwich loaf. What do you do about sandwich loaf? Because I don't have a lot of time to knead and make sandwich dough by hand. So I'm gonna show you with my Zerushi bread maker how you can make a loaf of bread. Actually, hold on. Here is half of the loaf. This is half the loaf that just came out of here that we were eating today. So I'm going to make a new loaf of this. It goes out to here or so. I'm going to make a new loaf and I'm going to show you that in about, 3 minutes, my sandwich loaf is done and then it bakes completely without me. So you put all the ingredients in. You just dump them in the bread maker. This is the Zerushi bread machine. It mixes it, it kneads it, it rises it, it kneads it again, it rises it again, and it bakes it. So in about 3 minutes worth of effort, I have our sandwich loaf that we use for having with eggs for all of our sandwiches. And for our family of 7, I make 2 to 3 of those a week. And it's incredibly easy and cost effective. Okay, so I'm gonna bring you along and you can see how I make it real fast. Okay, so there you have it. I know that was sped up, but I don't think that even took me 3 minutes. And that included grinding the grains. And that's one of the things I love. Like I said, you can usually what I'll do is I grab the grains very first, throw them in there, and I start grabbing out my other ingredients, and then I get the first 3 ingredients in here, and by the time I'm ready for the grain, it's done. I grab it, I throw it in. So this is all ready. It's literally all I have to do. I don't have to touch this again. So I'm gonna go stick this in my grain mill, in my bread machine, and my homemade course that I have set for it that has worked perfect for our climate, because sometimes you have to adjust it a little bit, is 2 hours and 20 minutes. So in 2 hours and 20 minutes, it'll be completely done. And that's all the work I had to do. Alrighty, well, hopefully you learned a lot today in my How to Grind Your Own Grains, even in a busy schedule class. I know we covered so much, you guys, and I know a bunch of you are like, wait a minute, Jami, I have like 50 questions. Put them down below because I plan on doing a lot more in this Baking with Jami series, but I wanna know what you guys wanna know, okay? So I know you've got questions about how it works. I'm gonna do some follow-up videos. The next one I'm gonna do is a grain mill comparison, because if you wanna start grinding your own grains, you've got to get your grain mill. If you are watching this in October 2018, there is actually an incredible deal on the Harvest grain mill that I'm going to tell you about in that video, and then I'll do a really good comparison so you can decide if this one's the better deal for you or that one. I will also cover, there's a KitchenAid attachment grain mill and a couple other options as well that I'll be covering so that you can figure out which one's the best one for you. So thank you guys for following along today. I love talking about this subject. Comment down below, let me know, and then go up to where you can find other videos. And then you guys, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified when we have more Baking with Jami videos and just more fun other kitchen related topics. All right, ladies, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you back here next time for Baking with Jami.